So, I imagine that you had struggle in your life, and I would like to, if you want, can you share me a part of your story when you had a struggle and how you overcame it? Because a lot of people are saying, "Oh, she is successful, he is successful. Yeah, he had no struggle. It's easy for him or for her. She she was lucky." So it's very amazing to listen to stories. So, do you have something to tell?
Yes, I'll tell you two stories.
Okay, two.
Okay? Two.
It's a bonus.
One one thing is that when I was very, very young, I actually had a cognition of how the world works. When I don't know, I must have been maybe 12 or 13 years old. I was still in junior, I wasn't even in high school yet. And I was in a club, okay? A club with all of the cool girls, you know? And one of the things when you're one of the cool girls is that there is an unwritten code that you're exclusive, that you exclude other people, and maybe even be a little bit mean, okay? And it never felt right to me to be mean, but I was kind of, caught up in the swirl of being one of the cool girls. And I remember one day when one of the girls who wasn't as cool came up to our group. We were sitting, it was at lunch, and we were all sitting, and she said, "I was told that I can be in your club." Somebody basically kind of set her up, okay? So she came over and said, "I heard that I was invited to be in your club." And she was so excited, and her eyes were like suns. She was like, "I heard that I was invited to be in your club." And the other girls who were in the club laughed at her, said, "Who told you that? You're not cool enough to be in our club." And at that moment, I saw the sadness. I saw the light go out of her eyes, and I saw her heart sink, and I saw the redness come into her cheeks. But what happened was, I not only saw it, but I felt it in my own physiology. And I had this, it was like a cognition of the world as a hologram. And I realized that one person's pain was all of our pain. That if you cause somebody else pain, you are causing yourself an equal amount of pain. And it might not be at that moment, but it will in fact come back to you. And at that moment, I was just a little girl, and it was kind of a big universal experience. But at that moment, I made the commitment to myself that I would never, ever consciously cause anybody pain again.
Cool.
And one of the ways that, I didn't know it then, but one of the ways that you can do this is when you do move from your head to your heart, because your heart never wants to cause anyone pain. And I just had an experience recently that I was going to have to do a project with somebody who I was like, "Oh, why do I have to do a project with that person? That person is annoying." And I had all the reasons why I didn't want to do it with that person. But those were all in my mind. And I was going in with, "Oh, this is going to be hard. This is going to be annoying." I moved into my heart, opened my heart, had the best experience, had the best results that we had ever had from one of these types of projects that we were working on. And again, it's all about moving from your head to your heart. So that was one experience that I had in junior high. And another experience that I had, and I have to be very honest with you, I did not have a lot of challenges in my life, like classical challenges. I had wonderful parents who loved me.
Yes.
We were not wealthy by any stretch, but we always had food on the table, and we always had enough and extra. And my parents always demonstrated the concept of giving. My father was very, very poor when he grew up, but he said that even though they only had one chicken for 8 people, the parents and the 6 kids, his mother would always save part of the chicken for the poor man who lived next door. So that was how I was raised. And I think when you do know these principles of giving and they're really inculcated in you from a very young age, it makes your path easier as you grow up. But part of my story, and you might not know this, was that when I started my seminar company, it became bigger and bigger. And within a few short years, it was being taught in many major US cities, 7 countries on 4 continents. And I was on media from coast to coast, and I was supposed to have my own daytime TV talk show. I was just about to sign a contract. I was going to be interviewed with a major LA producer, and I was going to interview people who were successful and happy, and how did they create that success. And I was about to enter into negotiations with a major publisher to publish my Yes to Success book. And I gave it all up like that one day, just gave it all up. I had an infomercial, actually the first infomercial that sold an information product in the 80s. And I gave it up when I gave birth to my daughter. And what happened was I took one look at her, really, and I thought, no way I'm going back to work. I had a new passion. And one of the things I teach people is follow your heart. Your heart will never lead you astray. And here's another important point. Each of us was put on earth for a God-given purpose, okay? There are people whose lives, people who are waiting for us to touch their lives, okay? And if you take a year off to be with your grandmother while she's passing, or if you take 2 years off to go hold AIDS babies in Uganda, or if you take 6 months off to work on a political campaign, and in my case, I took 20 years off to be a mom at home, what you were put on earth to do is not going to go away. And as a matter of fact, if you follow your heart, it's the surest path to living what you were put on earth to do. So I took 20 years off from my career as a speaker and a writer, and I gave up all those opportunities because I had to be true to myself. And how could I be out speaking? Actually, I was supposed to give, after I had my baby, I was supposed to give a big program in Singapore. And I'll never forget this. The guy called me and said he heard that I had the baby and was I ready to pick a date. And I said, you're going to have to call me back in 18 years. Because I knew that I had a new passion and I had to follow my heart. So I became a mom at home for 18 years.
Do you think maybe for other women, is it possible to do both?
And yes, and I'm not saying that every mother or every father should stay at home. I just knew that I had to follow my heart. And I'm not even saying that your kids will be better off if you stay at home. I have no idea if my kids were better off.
But you followed what was important for you. And it's
exactly. The main thing. And here's the other story I wanted to share with you. People say to me, did you ever doubt that you made the right decision? And I say, you better believe it. I absolutely doubted that I had made the right decision. And I remember this one day that my kids were about 2 and 5, and they were particularly not happy that day. And I'll never forget it. They wanted to watch television. And usually I didn't put them in front of the TV, but this was a TV day because nothing was making them happy. And I put them on the couch, and I was turning the dial. I was doing a channel check because they wanted to watch the show called Barney, the big purple dinosaur. And as I was doing the channel check, I see Oprah. And just as I was about to turn the dial, I see that Oprah is interviewing one of my students. Okay? And this student of mine had a best-selling book. And Oprah was interviewing him about this best-selling book, New York Times best-selling book. And as I'm standing there watching this with these 2 whiny kids on the couch. This person did a demonstration for Oprah that showed the power of the mind. And it was a demonstration that the person had learned at my seminar. It was actually something that I cognized in a meditation to show the power of the mind. Now, I'm not criticizing this person, because when I stopped teaching my seminars, I said, take my information, use it, teach it, public domain. I'm taking a break for 18 years. Actually, it turned into 21 when my son was born. The world needs it. It's all yours. So there was nothing wrong with this person showing this to Oprah. But Oprah's like, oh my God, this is amazing. This really shows how powerful your mind is. I'm going to use this and show it to my whole staff. She was like flipping out over this demonstration. And here I am, knee deep in dirty diapers, with these two kids on the couch, and here's this person on Oprah. And I burst into tears, because at that moment I thought that I had ruined my entire life. You understand?
Yes.
I'm like, oh, Oprah, me, whiny children. And I'm just crying. Of course, it startled my children. They stopped crying, because it's sure way to get your kids to stop crying. You start crying. And
That's a good advice.
It's good advice, right? So I'm standing in front of the TV, feeling very sorry for myself. And my daughter, after a while, she goes, Mommy? I say, what, sweetheart? She goes, what about the popsicles? Because I had promised them I'd make them orange juice popsicles. So I said, okay. And I turned on Barney, and I went into the kitchen. I had to, cut the pity party short, because I had to go make the popsicles. So I went into the kitchen, and I'm pouring the orange juice into the molds to make the orange juice popsicles. I'm still kind of crying a little bit, and I say, God, why did you make this happen? What did I do? I really blew it. And I got this message, and it said, remember the book. So it made me cry more. Yes, I was supposed to have the bestseller book. Oh. And then this message said, I say from God, the creator, but really it comes from inside, your higher self. And the voice said, not that book. And then I remembered a book that I had read many years ago about a man who had died and then was allowed to come back. And he told the story of what happened after he died. I'm sure you've probably read some books about people who have passed on and come back. And I needed to remember this at that moment, because what happened to this man is that when he died, he said that there was a being of light that met him at the other end of a dark tunnel. And the being of light said to him, would you like to see a movie reel of all of the most important moments in your life? And the man said, yes, absolutely. And the movie reel was very, very short. It showed him dancing with his daughter at her wedding. It showed him showing his son how to swing a baseball bat and a few other things. And the man said, wait a second. What about when I became an Eagle Scout? What about when I opened the factories in Japan? What about when my company started being traded on the Dow? And the being of light said, all of those moments glorified you. And then the being of light said, would you like to see the life of somebody who has also just passed over to this side? And the man said, yes, I would. And in the book, it said these curtains of golden light parted, and there sitting on a throne of golden light, surrounded by a host of angels, was the woman who used to take 3 buses to get to that man's house to clean his house. And then the angel said, the being of light said, would you like to see a movie reel of her life? And it was an endless reel. It showed her carrying a pot of soup to a sick friend. It showed her cheering at the baseball games, not only for her own kids, but for the kids whose parents couldn't be there because they had to work just to put food on the table. It showed her comforting a sad child. It showed her holding her mother's hand as her mother passed. It showed her greeting people at church. How you doing today? With a big hug and a big smile. And the being of light said to the man, when you get here, you find out that the only thing that matters while you're on earth is how much love you give.
Thank you very much for this story.
And you know, a lot of people, it's become almost like in the, you know, in the like 80s and 90s, it was, we wanted more and more material things. We wanted big houses and
Yes,
BMWs.
it's my
and
questions.